It's time to pick a side. The border war is on the air with BG and TanMan.
All right, gang, welcome into episode 112 of the Border War. I am the TanMan. We are joined via satellite telephone from a remote location, parts unknown, as they used to say in the professional wrestling world, by BG. BG, welcome, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate you keeping my location secret because that was the whole deal with the police officers that were involved, is that I could not tell anybody where I was.
Well, if we knew where you were, maybe we could locate your phone one day, but that's a story for another time. We want to thank everybody for joining in. We want to remind you that you can follow us on Twitter at The Border War. From that Twitter page, you will find the Twitter handles of BG and myself. In the interest of time, we will skip that and move on, but let you know they are.
I wonder if anybody out there knows what happened to my phone.
I'm sure someone does.
I wonder if they're listening to the show and chuckling.
Probably every single week. You can follow us on
I still think you may have had something to do with it, but we can keep going.
Like I said, story for a different day. You can also like and share our page on Facebook and the myriad of ways to listen to us, Spreaker, Spotify, etc., etc. Before we get started, just a disclaimer. We have been having some technical difficulties, as BG can attest to. So if the show just stops, then we'll just move on. But what are we? About 24 hours or so away from the start of the NFL draft as we sit here today recording this show, BG. I remember last year us doing the draft preview show.
Yep.
Looking at the top of the drafts, the different mock drafts, and we both sat here thinking, there's no possible way that Baker Mayfield is going number one. I think we both sort of laughed at that. And it seemed like at the 11th hour they came in and everything was, it's going to be Baker Mayfield. It's going to be Baker Mayfield. We're like, there's no way. Sure enough, it was Baker Mayfield, and it seems to have panned out. The consensus pick across the board right now seems to be Kyler Murray. So what are your thoughts on that one? Because it seems like this is just kind of replaying itself all over again to me.
There is a website I'm looking at here called SBNation.com, and it's got a breakdown of the entire first round of the draft. And at the bottom, it lists, I don't know, probably 25 to 30 different mock draft sources.
Mm-hmm.
Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, all these guys. John Clayton, who's apparently still out there somewhere.
Did he ever get his meatloaf?
I don't know. But I do know the guy who called him the Crypt Keeper no longer is on the radio or TV anywhere, and John Clayton's still around, so we at least know that much. But, they've got, it looks like about 90% of all of those drafts have Kyler Murray going number one to the Arizona Cardinals, and I've seen a couple of stories this week suggesting that they've sort of moved on from that, but this consensus is updated as of 2 hours ago, and the press corps out there is not agreeing with those stories. So it looks like it's going to be Kyler Murray. I mean, I think a lot of people thought it was going to be Kyler Murray as soon as that coaching hire was made, right? Here's the thing, and even going back to Mayfield, I mean, you say it looks like it panned out. Well, I mean, we've seen that before. I mean, it looks like that, after year one, the Redskins had done the right thing by trading their entire franchise away for Robert Griffin III. And you can make the argument that
I would make the argument that, that was the right move to make, and just because a situation is mishandled doesn't necessarily mean that at the time it wasn't the right move.
Yeah, no, and you're right, and we can get into that whole conversation another time. I think there's a case to be made for him sort of regressing as a passer and starting to run the ball more, and you can also make the case that the field itself caused injuries or whatever else. But all I'm saying is that I think the jury's still out on Mayfield a little bit, because the standard take is always that, defensive coordinators have an off season to sort of the NFL is such a slow-moving process, and they spend so much time getting ready for each team that really they don't do a lot of adjusting during the year. At least that's what everyone says. So we'll see.
Well, look,
I think taking Kyler Murray number 1 overall feels iffy. I obviously would be just fine with them doing it if it means the Redskins get a crack at Josh Rosen. I mean, he might not pan out either, but he's a lot better than who we have on the roster right now, or at least, I mean, Case Keenum, you've seen the best he's going to give you. So, yeah, that'd be fine with me. But just, okay, let's take that, for example, like Josh Rosen. I mean, all we know about him from last year, what did he go, 7th or 8th? All we know about him is that he can't play behind a really terrible offensive line, and I don't know why we think Kyler Murray is going to have any more success in Arizona throwing to a 68-year-old Larry Fitzgerald for one more season with no running game, no offensive line, and really no moves in the offseason to change that.
Listen, I think that when you talk about Kyler Murray, ESPN had a nice long article the other day talking about going back even through Kyler Murray's recruitment out of high school and his relationship with Cliff Kingsbury when he was in the college ranks and trying to get him to follow him along to Texas Tech, and it just never panned out. It seems like almost like Kingsbury took this he took the Arizona job. He went after the Arizona job with an eye on Lanier, and I think this was even a quote in the article. It was his choice the last time. It's my choice whether or not they link up. The two of them seem to have a great rapport. They've both spoken very highly of one another. They've stayed in touch, even though Murray went on to A&M and went on to Oklahoma. So it seems like the chemistry with him and Cliff Kingsbury is going to be there. But I just question, the constant turnover. Arizona, they hired Steve Wilkes for a year, and then they fired him. They fired him after 1 year. They drafted Josh Rosen last year. Looks like they're going to turn around and move on from him. I want to say the same things we said about Baker Mayfield last year. The knock on him was his size. It seemed like all the problems you had, if you had problems with drafting Mayfield at 1 last year, it seems like all those same problems still exist with Kyler Murray. But to me, you're talking two different things. Because Mayfield, we've talked about it. Mayfield is he's a strong guy. He's not the tallest guy, but he's a well-built, thick guy. Murray, he just looks like a toothpick out there, and I'm not sure.
Tons of questions all during
I'm not sure that he's going to be able to
about his weight.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's going to be able to take that beating. Fine, and everybody makes a deal because he measured out at a certain height, but to me, it wasn't the height; it was just his build and his frame.
And then too, there's the story that sort of went away that I think it was on NFL Network, perhaps the interview Charlie Casserly gave. Obviously, one of the Redskins' former general managers that kind of wouldn't name any names, but said just a lot of people he had talked to really had some kind of interview issues with Kyler Murray, that he had never heard that much negative feedback about a player. And of course, a lot of people jumped down Casserly's throat. Well, why would you come up with this? But the real question is, why would an 80-year-old former GM come out and say that if he's been on that network for 20 years and has never said it about anybody else?
Well, look, you hear it all the time.
Out there.
Listen, you hear it all the time with drafts. 29 teams or 30 teams or however many teams are in the league, in whatever league. Every team in the league but one can hate you, cannot want to draft you, and it only takes the one team to fall in love with you. And it seems right now that Kingsbury and Arizona have fallen in love with Kyler Murray.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. I don't think you're going to tell Cliff Kingsbury anything that's going to change his mind if that's
his guy. I mean, if that's his guy,
what he wants to do.
Yeah, then go take him.
Because they certainly didn't hire him to tell him who to draft.
No, you hired him. Listen, they took a chance on hiring him. The least you could do, in my opinion, I not necessarily agree with it, but the least you could do is let him go guy. He's had his eye on him for a number of years, so let him take his crack and If it works, it works, and if not, then they'll be drafting at the top of the draft here in another couple years. This time of year, the popular talk is guys haven't played a down of football in 3 months now. They have put on pads, they haven't done anything, but all of a sudden, you always hear this guy's stock is rising, this guy's stock is falling. Give me your take. Give me a name that you're looking out for that is going to go higher than expected tomorrow, and a guy that's going to go a little lower than everybody's expecting.
Well, I tell you, the hard thing is deciding what's expected, because a lot of these drafts, when you look at them, some of them assume certain things. For example, let's just take this one particular draft. Whose is this? Let's see. No, it's not his. Several drafts I looked at have the Redskins actually. Let me just find it.
Well, see, I want to know your take. I want to know your take.
If the Redskins take Dwayne Haskins at 15, doesn't that mean? I wonder how the Redskins take Dwayne Haskins at 15 if Kyler Murray goes number 1 overall, and the Redskins are one of the few teams willing to talk Josh Rosen with you. I think what that maybe means is that Rosen doesn't leave in time for the first round because the Redskins won't give up that 15 pick for him. Maybe that's what it means. But so just anything I say, let's take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of this stuff, sort of like we talked about the Giants last year, right? The Giants sitting at number 6. What they do at that pick, it really affects Washington to a large degree, because if they take a guy like Ed Oliver at 6, that's one thing. If they take a quarterback at 6, probably Dwayne Haskins, then that changes the whole complexion of the draft. But staying in our box here, one guy that I think is going to move up, and I've seen him lower than his 2 Clemson counterparts on every draft I've looked at, is Clelin Ferrell. If I were picking from those 3 guys, meaning Clelin Ferrell, Christian Wilkins, and Big O Osterine, then I would take Clelin Ferrell. I think he has the most talent. And people keep talking about Wilkins and his locker room presence, and that's all great, man, but locker room presence doesn't get you a first-round pick. And he's going to go, and don't get me wrong, Wilkins is going in the first round. But in the NFL, in today's NFL, I think a really good edge rusher is more valuable than a arguably undersized defensive tackle. I think Clelin Ferrell, I think he could go as high as 5 or 6. And I haven't seen him up there.
I haven't seen him anywhere up there. I heard Todd McShay mention the other day, in regards to this draft, he said that he felt like the top of the draft is loaded with guys that you would attach, the can't miss label to. When you're talking Quinnen Williams, Nick Bosa, those top 4 or 5 guys. It almost sounded like he was describing an NBA draft in some respects. But he was talking about how the top of the draft is really loaded, and how when you get to the back half of the first round, maybe you start seeing guys that have a second round grade to them that are going in that back half of the first round. But he said the trade-off is that when you get into the third round and start progressing towards the bottom of the third round, he said you're going to get some guys there that even have a lot of second round grades to them. So it may not be a draft that is top heavy on can't miss talent. He said, but this is you're going to find a lot of guys who are going to play a lot of years in the league with this draft. I think D-line is one of the places that you're going to see that, and a guy that I have a feeling is going to fall a little bit, and I don't understand it, is Ed Oliver from Houston. He's a guy that coming into the last college football season, everybody was, he was actually getting Heisman Trophy consideration, and the discussion is Ed Oliver the best player in college football was out there. He has some injury issues. He had the blow up on the sideline with Major Applewhite about wearing the jacket or whatever that was about. So then they started, they started kind of questioning
he had on the starter's jacket.
Yeah.
He was not starting.
Yeah. So they started kind of questioning his all the stuff comes out. Does he want it bad enough? Does he love the game? All those code words. So I think for whatever reason,
exactly
Ed Oliver,
he ran a 4.7 40-yard dash.
And I think for whatever reason, Oliver's going to fall behind, the Quinnen Williams type guys, and I think you're going to get Ed Oliver somewhere on the back half, of that top 10. Maybe he falls out of the top 10 just to buy a pick or two, but I think Ed Oliver is someone who should probably be one of the top 3 or 4 picks in the draft.
He's a great player, and he's one thing that's going to affect a guy like him is that he played that 3 technique in the NFL, and you got so many 3-4 fits now. But then so that's going to affect him. But at 287 pounds, I mean, he could play the defensive end in a 3-4 front, and he's athletic enough to do it. Another thing, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I'll just use Marquise Brown from Oklahoma. Let's just use him as an example, all right? So I've seen him as far down as like 22, but he's the only wide receiver I see in most of the first-round mock drafts out there. I think people have gotten really wary about wide receivers, and I think all 3 of our NFL teams in the box, the Cowboys, the Panthers, and the Redskins, I think that's the position you hear their fan base screaming.
Yeah. Well,
right? Everybody wants a wideout.
Well, everybody wants the wideout. The wideout is one of the sparkly, shiny new toys on a football team.
So what I'm saying is, if you look at a team, I don't know, like the Panthers at 16, like the Dolphins at 13, let's go on up a little bit, like the Bills at 9, and here's the one I think that is the most probable, the Lions at 8. Should they take a wide receiver? No.
Not at
they
8.
Should not.
Not at 8.
Have the Lions taken wide receivers that high before? Yes. Yes, they have.
Well, the Lions. I
think a guy like Marquise Reed could move way up the draft if somebody kind of forgets their discipline. I'm sorry, Marquise Brown, and bites. And this is a guy, when I watch him, his college film, he reminds me of a guy like Deshaun Jackson. He's got that kind of big play speed, and that can be very seductive for undisciplined NFL franchises like the Lions, who have had literally 0 success in the last 20 years.
You talk about the Lions. I think the Lions, and I know they're not in the box, I'll be really, really quick. I think they're in a prime position to try and get out of that spot.
No question. That's the smart thing to do.
Especially, if you get a quarterback or 2 taken above them, then you're going to start seeing teams, like Miami, like Denver, like Washington, that clearly have quarterback needs. And I think you'll start seeing. I think you'll see one of those teams jump up and potentially trade into the top 10 to take a quarterback. Maybe Daniel Jones, maybe Drew Lock. Who knows? But So anyway, we'll move on. We'll start with the Carolina Panthers. BG. A lot of discussion, what the Panthers' biggest need is. You see a lot of defensive end. Of course, they're losing Julius Peppers, but an interesting discussion I heard the other day. Should Carolina go defensive end or offensive tackle with their first pick?
Well, the consensus pick right now across about 30 different average drafts here is Andre Dillard, obviously offensive tackle from Washington State. And I've seen a couple of other offensive tackles listed on different takes on the Panthers. But offensive tackle seems to be where the press corps has them leaning. There's another Jonah Williams is another prospective pick there.
I've seen Juwan Taylor. I have a feeling Taylor will be gone before they get to them, though.
Yeah, and I think most draft mocks I've seen have Juwan Taylor leaving before 16. But It's one of those things that it's difficult to go against a tackle. I mean, it's never going to excite your fan base to pick an offensive tackle in the first round, but there are so many cases of it really contributing to winning Super Bowls. Now, I mean, I'm not going to go off on the Panthers offense here, but I think we all know that Cam's health is really all that matters to that offense right now. Mm-hmm. And so if you can help protect him with a left tackle that can hold that blind side corner and let him stay in the pocket, because he has shown a willingness to do that the past couple of seasons. And we talked about it midway through the season. The Panthers, they were a top 3 team in the NFC, I think, right up until when he got hurt. Mm. And we didn't really see it on the field exactly what caused his shoulder to be injured, but after that, it was just really obvious that something wasn't right. Now, one wonders how healthy Cam Newton's ever going to be at this point with his size. He still hasn't developed into that pocket passer we'd like him to see, but we also know that North Turner can call the kind of game that lets that offense be very, very successful. They can keep everybody healthy. And so while the Panthers fan base seems to want a wide receiver, I think going with a guy like John Williams or another offensive tackle is probably the right move.
I agree with you. I think if you look at their roster and their season last year, I think you can make an argument that defensive end or defensive line in general, especially in this draft, finding an edge rusher to replace the 99-year-old Julius Peppers, who finally retired after 47 years in the league, you can make that argument that that's the way to go. But you've got Cam Newton. He's going to be coming up for a contract extension sooner rather than later, and he's also going to be knocking on the door to 30 if he's not there already. They've got to find out, one, whether or not that shoulder is healthy, whether or not he can stay healthy. But two, I feel like the last few years, they've given Cam Newton the weapons. They've given him Christian McCaffrey, and they drafted DJ Moore, and Curtis Samuel stepped up and had a nice season last year. I feel like they've given Cam Newton those weapons. Now you've got to protect him. You've got to do everything you can to insulate him and protect him.
Because until he got hurt, those weapons were working.
Yeah, they were fine.
Their offense looked unstoppable for about the middle third of the season.
I've seen some Panther discussion about, is this the place? Should they try and trade back? Maybe pick up, stay with Taylor Moton, Darrell Williams as your 2 tackles. Maybe trade back, pick up another pick. Maybe you can come up with one of the, you can get a defensive lineman or an edge rusher later in the first round. But should you try and leave the first day or two with a quarterback? I don't know. To me, Cam Newton was Ron Rivera's guy when they took over. Those two have been joined at the hip. I think the success for Rivera goes as Cam Newton goes, and it's an interesting discussion. But I think that they've gone all in because Ron Rivera knows that it's put up or shut up time for his job this year as well. Like I said, interesting discussion, but I don't see Carolina trying to come out of this thing with any idea that they found their Cam Newton successor. What about you?
Well, I mean, no, I definitely don't think that that's the case. It was considered a weak quarterback draft 2 years ago, even. For them it would be ridiculous for them to take somebody in the first round, because you take a quarterback in the first round, you really need to put him on the field. You don't take a quarterback in the first round to possibly replace Cam in 2 or 3 seasons. But yeah, I think if anything else, they're just looking for the inevitable starter when Cam hurts his shoulder, hurts his knee, and can't play for a couple of games.
Yeah, we've seen Cam get banged. I think it's at least worth discussing. I don't think it's what they'll do, but we've seen Cam Newton get banged up before. Now you can say, most teams, when your starting quarterback goes down, there's going to be a massive drop off. But if Carolina is going got their eye on returning to the playoffs, and Ron Rivera's got an eye on staying in Carolina beyond this season. Backup quarterback is a position that they're going to have to address. I don't think that Heineke or Hanky or whatever his name was is going to be good enough should Cam Newton should he get banged up again. So, like I said, I'm not anticipating it, but I think it is at least worth discussing. Speaking of quarterbacks, BG, you guys are going to be on the clock very soon, and in my notes, I'm jotting down the biggest need for the Washington Redskins: quarterback.
You know, as down as I've been on the Redskins to stop, last season, and when you let's just start. When you look at this defense that's coming back, TanMan, this could be a top 2 or 3 defense in the league. This defense is elite. They've got talent stacked across the board. I mean, there's some questions, but people need to accept that in today's NFL, you're going to have questions.
Yeah, there are very few teams that don't have a question somewhere.
You're not, yes, you need Josh Norman to step up. Yes, you need some more consistent play at safety. But when you look at, at the time, what looked to be a really questionable signing, Reuben Foster, now acquitted of all. I mean, the Redskins come out with basically a first-round player for $600,000 a year for one season. And you look at that defensive line. I mean, the Redskins' defense was playing really, really well last year, right up until when Alex Smith got hurt. And with Darius Geis coming back from his torn MCL, you expect the run game to be better. And you're right, man. It's all about quarterback play for this team.
So where are they going? When they're on the clock,
that's where we get into this idea. So if we're all going to say that Kyler Murray is going first overall to Arizona, then you have to think that the phone lines between Washington and between Arizona are lit up. Now, here's the question: if you're the Redskins and you're comfortable that Dwayne Haskins is not going to go to the Giants at 6, and again, can the Giants pass up a quarterback knowing what we know? Knowing that they did it last year, knowing that Eli is at best on the very, very backside of his career, okay? The question is, do the Redskins see someone else in the draft, a Drew Lock, that they want just as bad as they want Josh Rosen? And if the answer is no, and they think that Haskins is not going to be there, because every report I read says that they're very high on Dwayne Haskins. If they don't think they can get him, is Josh Rosen worth that pick at 15?
Yes.
I mean, see, that's me too. Because this kid, I mean, he is still, I've heard multiple sources say that if he had been graded out this year, Josh Rosen would be higher rated than Kyler Murray.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you have to. I'm with you on that. I can't believe we're agreeing about it. You give up that pick because how many first-round picks have the Redskins blown anyway?
Listen,
go get a quarterback that's got a year in the league. Put him behind a much better offensive line than he had.
Josh Rosen,
one would think he's going to have a run game to support him.
Josh Rosen's gotten a bad rap. Like you said, it's a terrible offensive line, a bad situation.
Literally, go watch his highlights from last year, man. It is comical how fast he was under pressure.
Clearly unstable coaching staff, front office regime, whatever you want to call it. The Arizona Cardinals right there are a total train wreck. It is patently unfair to judge Josh Rosen's performance last year and label him, as what, as a bust or whatever the label you want to attach to him is. If I'm Washington, if I'm Washington and Arizona wants the 15th pick, have at it, guys. Have at it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Arizona's going to wind up holding on to Rosen through the draft. Here's my guess. I think they hold on to him through the draft. And I think Washington does end up taking a quarterback. For some reason, it could be Haskins. If the Giants take Haskins at 6, then I think it'll be Daniel Jones from Duke.
If the Giants don't take Haskins at 6, do you think it's Haskins?
If the Giants don't take Haskins at 6, then yes, I think. Well,
I agree.
If New York passes on Dwayne Haskins at 6, to me that's them saying, all right, that's not our guy. And if that's the case, I could see New York trying to trade back up, maybe trying to get ahead of Miami, because I think Denver wants Drew Lock. I could see the Giants trying to trade up to get ahead of Miami to go and get Daniel Jones with the David Cutcliffe tie in there with Eli Manning. I could see that.
I see a lot of drafts having
Miami
the Broncos take a linebacker at 10 too.
Yeah,
because they are hurting there.
I see that. They've got a lot of holes as well.
It all comes down to the Cardinals and the Giants, though.
Yeah, but what
did the Cardinals do at 1? If they take Kyler Murray, what does that mean for Josh Rosen? And not specifically what it means for Josh Rosen, but what does it mean for Josh Rosen by tomorrow night?
Yeah, well, that's it. And
because we're talking about the first round here.
When it comes to the Redskins, I feel like they had a plan with Alex Smith, and Alex Smith was supposed to be the guy to get them through 2 or 3 years and kind of be that bridge and buy him some time to find, quote unquote, the next guy. While they built the defense up and surrounded that quarterback position with weapons like Darius Geis, I think in an ideal world, maybe the receiver.
They wanted to win games 17-14, ball control.
Yeah, maybe
shut the running game down on the other side, right?
Maybe in an ideal world at this pick, if Alex Smith is completely healthy, maybe the receiver from Oklahoma is the pick there when you guys come up.
Sure.
But I think Alex Smith, his whole situation now being as tenuous as it is, I think that completely changes everything. And if I'm Washington, I'm not leaving. You can talk about the strength of this quarterback class if you want. I'm not leaving this draft without a young quarterback. I'm not leaving this first round, without a young quarterback. If it's Haskins, or if it's Daniel Jones, or even if it's Drew Lock. If you, as you say, if Denver passes on Lock, some of these guys start slipping past the Miamis, the Cincinnatis, the Denvers. I think that it's too risky not to take one.
That being said, of course, the consensus pick going out, just out of nowhere for Washington at 15 is the Ole Miss receiver, DK Metcalf. I talked about him after the combine, sort of jokingly, about how this guy won the combine, but when you went back and looked at his numbers as a wide receiver in a pass-happy offense, he basically had produced nothing. If the Redskins take him at 15, oh boy.
He's
just going to have some things to say next week.
Yeah. That and cornerback. Real quick, I think cornerback could be an interesting spot for Washington.
The thing about cornerback is that literally a third of the picks in the first round are going to be cornerbacks, according to every draft I see.
Yeah.
So at 15, man, you're fighting a losing battle there.
Well, look, you've got Josh Norman. He's been okay, but he's getting paid a lot of money, and to not be just okay.
Well,
I think I saw where they could release him.
Washington media take on Norman is that his head's not always on the field.
I think I saw where Washington could release Norman and save around $12 million. And so, if there's a run on quarterbacks and Washington just kind of stands where they are, and those quarterbacks kind of come off the board ahead of them, watch out for Greedy Williams from LSU or possibly DeAndre Baker to come off the board. You know how Washington seems to love those SEC defensive players lately.
They do, particularly from one team.
Yeah. So the last team in the box is, of course, the Dallas Cowboys. BG, I'm not really sure how much of the first round that I'm going to be tuned in for, or the second round for that matter. The Cowboys don't have a pick until pick 58 in the second round. So there's really no point in discussing the top picks in the draft. I
think we can talk sort of about their general philosophy of what are their needs, and I mean none of these are going to be surprising, right?
Oh no,
I think we're talking safety and we're talking tight end.
Safety.
I think those are the needs that you look for early on in the Cowboys day 2 draft. The safety play in Dallas has been putrid. And obviously, you did bring back your tight end, but did you really bring him back?
Well, and that's interesting. One of the names that I've seen bandied about, coming all the way back down to where we are, a guy that Gamecock fans got to know real well this past season, Jay Sternberger from Texas A&M.
Yeah, Lord,
in the game against the Gamecocks in the other Columbia, Sternberger had 7 catches. There's our technical difficulties creeping up on us. 7 catches for $145 and a touchdown against the Gamecocks last year. He had 48 for 832 and 10 touchdowns for the Aggies last season. BG, when I started, I wonder what Jason Witten's numbers were. Witten's numbers for his college career were 68 for 797 and 7 scores.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember Witten in college. I would have thought they were a lot better than that. But Sternberger could be an interesting name to watch as a potential Witten replacement, because Lord knows we've gone down the Witten replacement road half a dozen or more times.
I'll say this about Jason Witten, though. What he's good at doing isn't really going to be affected by his age. What he's good at doing is reading his own defense. He can find the soft spots in his zone and just sit down there and catch an 8-yard pass and fall forward for 2 more yards. I mean, his age isn't going to affect that. Witten's still going to get plenty of attention, I think, if his body holds up.
Yeah, it's like I said, that could be a spot. Another spot where the Cowboys could be looking to upgrade is in their defensive backfield.
Yeah, that's where I would go. I would go with a guy like I said. I thought you were making fun of our Belt Bowl loss. That's when I jumped on Juan Thornhill as Virginia's safety. But I mean, ever since the Earl Thomas thing seemingly has fallen through for the last time now, right?
Yeah, no, that's done. That's over with.
Yeah, that's done. So we're not going to talk about that anymore. Since that didn't work out, I mean, the Cowboys, in today's NFL. The safety to me matters the way the cornerback did in the 90s. With the way that everything is spread from one side to the other, that safety oftentimes is the only thing that can keep those chunk plays from breaking off. Because we used to talk about sort of the first layer, the second layer, and the third layer of a defense. Well, watch the way most defenses line up now, right? Everyone's standing up. Basically, everyone's on the line of scrimmage. The running back hits the hole the right way. I mean, sometimes the free safety's the only one who can stop that score. Well, and Dallas has given up way too much yardage over the middle in the past couple seasons with poor safety play.
Yeah, that's one of the names that is out there as a possible pick at 58 if he continues to fall. You talk about a safety being able to stop the run. A guy that would fill a perfect need right there, in my opinion, is the guy from Washington, Taylor Rapp. You read some of the things on him, and a lot of the knock on him was his pro day wasn't maybe up to snuff, but he's been compared to kind of a Tyrann Mathieu hybrid. They say he's okay in coverage, but they say his strong suit is really against the run. The Cowboys have tried to address the defensive backfield this offseason. They brought in George Ialoka. What they're going to do with Byron Jones, I'm sure he's going to get paid. Where exactly they pay him to play is still up in the air. He's played a little bit of everywhere. My guess is he's going to eventually wind up at corner, which is where he wound up at last year. So that safety position is one of a dire need. It's like we're just kind of beating the same drum, because it seems like we've said that for many, many, many years now. And surely the Jeff Heath experiment has got to come to an end.
One would think. I hope not, though.
Why?
I enjoy it.
Why? That like Jeff Heath is like the bane of my existence when it comes to the Cowboys. I don't know why you have to be hateful
for them.
I don't know why, but I don't know why you have to be hateful towards me. Like, why are you?
I don't have to be. I just choose to be.
Yeah, well, that just shows what little class you have, I guess.
I agree. How much time do we have?
We are up against the clock right now, as a matter of fact.
One quick quick thing to watch out for, out of nowhere, the Bengals at 11. If they take a quarterback, and I think it's possible, this whole thing could just explode. They take a quarterback before they're supposed to.
Well, yeah,
everything under that gets affected.
Yeah, they take a quarterback early, but then you're talking about, we had the discussions about what Arizona's going to do with Josh Rosen. Then I think you got to start throwing Andy Dalton in that mix.
Oh, no question. Yeah, and I mean that's the thing, and I mean you could definitely make the argument that the Bengals have seen what they're going to get out of Dalton.
Yeah, look, Andy Dalton is one of those guys. I thought I've always been an Andy Dalton fan. And I've thought he's never been as bad as people make him out to be. But if Cincinnati feels like they've got a new coach, a young coach, and Zach Taylor, I think is his name. If they go quarterback there, you hear that they're in love with Dwayne Haskins as well, so possibly
that's where you normally see him going. If it's not to Dallas, to New York at 6 or to Washington at 15, a lot of people have that pick at number 11.
I think, like I said, if New York passes on him and you want Haskins, then you're going to have to get ahead of Cincinnati and
could very well be
to get him. So yeah, that's it. Tomorrow, like I said, NFL draft first round tomorrow. What is it? Second and third round on Friday night, and then the 3 through 7 or 4 through 7 on Saturday. That's the way they do it now.
That sounds right.
Sounds right.
That sounds right.
All right, guys, you can email the show. Tell us where we're wrong. Give us your thoughts and opinions on the upcoming draft at CarolinaBorderWar@gmail.com. And we'll, like we said at the beginning of the show, whichever way you prefer to listen to BG and I each week, whether that's Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, subscribe to the show. If there's a place to leave a review, give us some stars, leave a review, tell us how awesome we are, because trust me, we are much better than some of the alternatives in some of your local markets. So that is it. BG, we are out of here. Hopefully the technical difficulties held off.